Hello to you all. Today we have a very important video on interventionist or holistic dry fasting. Make your choice. We are seeing in dry fasting that there are people trying to standardize dry fasting with methods that will be imposed on everyone, on the whole population, whether old, young, with pathologies, no pathologies, small, tall, with various constitutions, physiologies, different ways of working, and they want to impose one model, which would be one size fits all, a unique model for everyone. We will try to break this down a little bit, and then we'll talk about errors that, for me, in a dry fast that is too interventionist will lead to issues in the exits. Before that, I'm Michel Deladoey, a nutritionist coach with a state diploma in nutrition and dietetics. I've been a therapist for about 20 years, and I am a graduate of 2 schools of naturopathy in France. I studied in Paris at the Senate, and I am an eternal student, as I call myself, so I'm always doing research to perfect my skills in various fields, whether it be energetics, bioresonance. I studied in Russia, in Moscow, at the Institute of Psychophysics of Omsk and Moscow, and then I used technologies like Metatron, bioresonance equipment, and also BOL, the HDB camera, for those who are familiar with it. I specialized in dry fasting, so I am currently the only coach who sees patients, who sees groups holistically. Holistic means caring for body, soul, and spirit at once. In dry fasting, we cannot dissociate one from the other. The body is an electromagnetic being. We cannot isolate the physical. Everything functions together, psychic, the spiritual body, soul, spirit. We are electromagnetic beings who radiate things. And when supporting dry fasting, we must consider these aspects. We can't just stay on the physical side, as many people practice it in other centers, where they remain on the surface and try to impose a single model for everyone, the same thing, without observing details about the person. We are seeing drifts that happen in different sectors in fasting, whether it is dry fasting, water fasting, juice cleanses, things like that. And it was the opportunity to talk about all that, to add some nuances. This video is not made to attack people, it is not made to attack persons, a center, countries, but to put back discernment, consciousness. When you practice a fast, how the fast should happen, and are you in something that is fair, that is conscious, or we try to take you into things that are too complicated for you. That was the goal of this video, to put things back in their proper place. Dry fasting is a powerful and effective tool. It is precisely because it is powerful that it must not be practiced in just any way. In any way. It is not enough just to hold several days without drinking or eating. It is not enough to follow a protocol found somewhere, pulled out of a hat, from a book or a PDF file that you would have been given. Dry fasting requires listening, caution, and a lot of humility. Personal individualization, and especially a fundamental principle which for me is the key of my accompaniments. It is the key, the base of everything. And I realize that, well, we have people who will fast, and I have seen accidents in quotes. There was no death, there were no serious things. But there were issues, there were people who started dry fasting alone. Too long, I've seen it all. There are people who have been to certain people whose names I will not mention, who found themselves worse than before. So,
not the case.
People who start in this dry fast must know what they are starting, know their energetic state, their reserves, and it's something that must be discussed. We do not just start this practice in any way, as it requires knowledge and being accompanied by people who are not gurus, but people with professional conscience who won't lead you into delusions or complicated things. Dry fasting must remain something that is mastered with conscience, humility, and wisdom. And listening, it is the key to dry fasting. That is it. It's listening to the person in front of us and understanding their patterns and functioning on physical, energetic, and emotional levels, even spiritual. So I want to compare two approaches that we see. We have on one side approaches that we see as a bit mainstream in dry fasting. You have that I won't lead, but in different countries we can talk to different people who practice that in a non-holistic way. And then with techniques that are too interventionist, which will lead to more problems than others. So too many products, techniques, and walks, for example. We see people doing walks that are too long, exhausting themselves. And then also we have manipulations that should not be done when one is dry fasting. We are already in an ordeal that is difficult. If I have manipulations, too many rules, too rigid. And on the other side, we'll talk about a much more sensitive, holistic, simpler, more individualized and attentive approach, where we let people be in their inner selves, where they can express emotions, where we give gentle practices of consciousness expansion, where we bring people back to very basic, simple things with little manipulation, just self-work, bodily. And then above all, simple preparation, simple things during the dry fast, things that will stimulate energy, that will fluidify the sound, not complicated, invasive things that will complicate your fast, whether during or after the dry fast. So, holistic therapy is respectful of our living nature. The problem with interventionist dry fasting is that, well, not eating, not drinking is not an eating disorder. We are in a metabolic change when we are in a dry fast. The fluids will redistribute. Digestion rests during dry fasting. With water fasting, you still have secretions. With juice diets, all your enzymes are working. You must digest carbs, vitamins, and enzymes. You are never truly at rest. That is why juice fasting is not for me a fast. It is a hypocaloric diet with work being done, that is certain, but you have much less autophagy, much less ketosis, etc. You have fasting mechanisms that are not complete and finished as you have in a dry fast with maximum effects. The maximum amount of autophagy and the maximum number of recovery cells. Water fasting, you are in between, and juice cures, you are diminished, you have fewer results, less efficiency in terms of recovery at this level. So, in fasting, you have the nervous system that is in adaptation. The stress that is inflicted, the body adapts. It will create cyanogenesis and various repair mechanisms. It will, what we call, work the law of hormesis. The body will adapt to a stress that we inflict on it. And then, if the stress is controlled, the body will potentialize itself at the exit. We will gain the benefits. The body then enters a fasting phase of energy saving, of cleansing and reorganization. And then the real question is, why add interventions? Why add, for example, there are protocols, they make you take sorbents, they make you take psyllium, they make you do enemas, they make you get powerful massages like a Thai massage or a Russian massage. These are, to me, unsuitable for dry fasting, too intense. Walks that are too long, which will exhaust you. They inflict needles in the body with saline solution to supposedly relax you. All that is not dry fasting. They use needles with saline solution. They inject water into your body. You are already exiting the dry fast when you do that. Or leeches. During the dry fast, I have a little story about that. A lady, it was in Montenegro, she got leeches injected. She went to the village to do that. because it was good, because she had heard that leeches were valid. So certainly it is valid, but not in the dry fast, not linked to the dry fast. Leeches are very effective. I respect that. But she had leeches applied. She returned to the center where we were staying. Then she started vomiting. We had to stop her. She was so ill, it was a disaster. Anyway, we do not do leeches during the dry fast. It will disturb the fast. It will create complications. There is a way to do it. Leeches are out. No bee stings during dry fasting. It complicates things and brings stress. It will bring tensions and it will change things in the body while you are already in a mechanism of cleaning, of purification. Let the fast do what it needs to do and bring you what it has to offer. It is a surgical work of cleaning, of autophagy. When you send bee stings, it creates a stress. And then we will cut off the benefits of cleansing and recovery. The ketosis will be altered. Physiological parameters change because you inject a product, a sting that will send messages, it will thwart. I am not saying that all these practices are bad. On the contrary, I only say good things about them, but they must be separated. We must do them after or before, but not during or not just after a dry fast. During a dry fast, the context changes everything. A body that is not eating or drinking does not need to be overstimulated. It just needs a security framework where people feel good on a physical level, on an emotional level. We need to reassure people. We need rest, warmth, an open heart, observation, and the presence of competent people around you who will know how to detect signs of worsening, who will know how to explain them when symptoms arise during the fast. You must decode them, as these symptoms can be positive or negative. And that is why it is important to be accompanied by professionals during a dry fast who will know where you are in your progress. The real know-how is not to intervene with a body and a body with things that will add overstimulations. Sometimes the real expertise is precisely not to intervene, to let the body and nature take their course, like a wounded animal. When it is in the wild and sick, what does it do? It does not ask a doctor to inject things. It is not going to have a coffee pot of coffee to overstimulate it. It is not going to have the right to meals. There will not be anyone there to provide them with any kind of care. You see, a wounded animal in the wild will rest, turn inward, and wait for it to pass. That is how one should approach a fast. It is about not having too many people interfering. Create unnecessary disruptions in the rhythm of the fast. A dry fast does not need to be a spectacle in order to be valid. We have all sorts of gimmicks that can enhance a fast with all kinds of techniques from the East, from Asia, I don't know where from, but that has no place in dry fasting, especially the therapeutic kind we practice. You can practice meditation, you can do yoga, very simple and respectful things. That is what I tend to favor. So just because we add more, it does not mean we will get more results. It is often the opposite. The more we add, the more we are going to blur the mechanisms of repair and cyanogenesis and autophagy. We blur the lines. The more we stimulate, the more we tire. The more we complicate, the more we will get lost in things that are too complicated, and the body will no longer know how to get out of it because there is too much stimulation. Too much information kills information, we all know. So the danger of standardized protocols, it is really a big mistake that we see. It is to apply the same protocol to everyone, the same preparation, same duration, same walk, same exit, same nutrition, same dietary supplement. But people are different. A person can be young, they can be old, they can be athletic, another can be exhausted, they can have good digestion. Another person will have an inflammatory intestine, another will have two. Low mineralization, another will be deficient in a certain element, and so on. Another will lack protein, they are completely frail, and so on. Therefore, each person is different, you see. You really must adapt the dry fast to each person individually, understanding their temperaments. That is why we have an intake test where people can get a bioenergetic analysis of where they stand, how their organs function, and what level the liver is at. The human body is not a machine, it is not a PDF. A woman in our course gave us a 21-day prep PDF. I read the 150 pages, it seems expert, you read it and already I read it, it's all over the place, it mixes up detox. You must do enemas, do this, do that. I said something is wrong, it's all over the place. I read it, I didn't understand, that's it. The only element in this 150-page document was that you should not take salt when coming out of a dry fast, that is all. I read this document and said it's trash. There's nothing interesting. I later learned this document was made by a woman working in a travel agency. So this is a purely commercial fast, having nothing to do with people who have field experience, who know how to see, who know how to understand someone fasting. It is commercial, it has no place in a fast, but anyway, everyone has experiences. We have people who realize and see that it is very expensive, that is for sure, that is it. So the human body is not an Excel spreadsheet, it is not a miracle recipe. The support must be serious. It starts with a fine reading of the person, a reading of the terrain, of their vitality, of their sleep, their stress, their tension, their pulse, their history. They take meds, the state of the digestive system, their relationship to nutrition, etc. Without this, we aren't supporting, we're doing logistics, we are in commercial, we are selling something, we are selling a protocol. Do it, adapt yourself, manage yourself, that is it. So it is not the kind of fast we propose. We are really into a dry fast that is holistic, caring for the person in all dimensions. The other point that is important is safety. It is a dry fast. Safety is not a detail, it is central, it is vitality. We cannot simply say, listen to your body, everything is normal. It is a detox crisis. You have pain there, I have pain there. It is normal. It's the work of the fast. We must still explain things to the person. In the fast, we listen to ourselves, we discuss with the companions, the coaches, and then we have a discussion. We try to reassure people to understand their symptoms. Is it a crisis? Is it normal, not normal, etc.? And then some people do not know how to interpret these signals, and then that is why sometimes we have phone calls. I started a dry fast, it went badly, and so on. So don't start if you don't master it, you don't know what you're doing. That is it. So some want to compare themselves to others, which is very bad. We are all different. We all have distances that will be different from one another. The dry fast is not a performance. We must not push dry fasts for too long. We see in some centers, some drifts, where they push people to distances that are too long. If you don't do 9 days, you won't heal. I saw a video the other day of a lady walking in the mountains. I don't know if it was in India or Africa. I don't know. It was really worrying. This woman, that is it, was speaking. Yes, I did my 9 days of dry fasting. I succeeded. But you see her, it was pitiful. She was in a state. She was nearly fainting, but so happy to have managed 9 days. Then you see this lady who was walking. We made her walk, we climbed, but physical efforts with a backpack walking all day, it makes no sense. It's very dangerous because when you exhaust yourself with long walks, you have no cortisol left. You've used up all your energy, so you stop detoxifying. There's no energy to clean, no energy for autophagy. Autophagy, you have no energy left to recover. You need, when you are coming out of a dry fast, to have a sufficient energy level to be able to get back on your feet, to recover, and then be able to create stem cells to repair the areas. If you have no energy, because you're exhausted from walks too long, it will be complicated. You must come out of a dry fast in good shape with an energy level that is still sufficient. That is why activities during a dry fast remain very gentle, very soft. We do not push people into things that are too complicated. We go for walks. I'm not saying walking is bad. Far from it, it's great. But for me, it shouldn't exceed an hour a day. These are just strolls. We walk quietly around the center where we are staying or at home. We do not force it. We are not here to do kilometers. I have seen protocols where people are required to do 10 kilometers per day, but it is completely ridiculous. It makes no sense. We cannot impose a distance on a person, I don't know, 80 years old, who perhaps can no longer move, who is perhaps overweight. She already struggles to walk a kilometer at home, and then you tell her she must do 10. It is impossible. You really have to adapt to the person. We cannot impose walks on everyone. It makes absolutely no sense. This is what we call excesses, where we want to impose things that are totally oversized for people who are not capable. And then there, people exhaust themselves and it leads to problems afterwards. In a dry fast, we control the parameters, the constants. I cannot detail them, that is in my masterclass videos, there is a little bit in my book. We control the blood pressure, the usual stuff I'm not going to go into. But there are about 15 points that we monitor to avoid precisely exceeding one's capacity for adaptation, so that afterwards we pass to the other side, where we are no longer able to recover. And then there we are in what we call a state of innervation, where the nervous system is exacerbated, and then we have exceeded our adaptive capacity. The body can't recover. We've gone too far. The dry fast becomes harmful and complicated. You'll have few benefits or even aggravations. That's definitely not where we want to end up. We must stop the dry fast at the moment, just before this point where you feel unwell. When you go too far in the dry fast, the effects afterwards will be complicated to get back on track. It is important to leave a dry fast while still being in a state of energy and favorable health, and not go into excesses where you have dizziness, significant palpitations, sleep that is too disturbed, etc. You must still remain within a limit that should not be exceeded. So we will evaluate all these factors. A good guide must know when to continue. We can give one more day. There are discussions. We observe the person, how the person feels, when to slow down, when to exit. There you go. So these are observations that we make during the course. We must stop the person. We stop them. And that is what holistic support is. It's knowing when to stop, showing humility without going too far. So I said it, the added practices, so that I think are not adapted. So we must remain in simple things. We do not impose kilometers in the day that are too long. There you go. So during a dry fast, blood pressure and energy can vary. The nervous system is more sensitive. So move, yes, but move quietly. We have methods to maintain movement in the body. We do not need to walk. We have systems to support body energy. We have all the methods on site. So this helps people who cannot walk to stimulate the emunctories in a natural way, with systems that are very gentle and restore energy rather than remove it when you exhaust yourself with complex things. We do massages adapted to the person, gentle and understanding. We won't create stress or add complicated in the dry fast. The massage must be light. It can support the nervous system, but a violent, deep, aggressive massage during a fast can be an extra stress. You'll contract your nervous system, creating a second stress. I'm against massages that are too violent or deep. Needles, essential oils, therapy that's too interventionist during a dry fast. It is not adapted, too violent, too much stimulation. I'm not saying these practices don't have their place, but they need a different context outside of a dry fast, and then we must observe them with caution. So During a dry fast, the body is already in deep adaptation. He is not eating, he is not drinking, he is saving energy, reorganizing his fluids, calming his digestion, and entering a natural mechanism of regulation, of repair and cleansing. Adding overstimulations from therapy, needles or heavy massages, leeches or bee stings at that point is just adding extra stimulation. It forces the body to manage extra reactions, pain, inflammation, immune responses, or nervous stress, sometimes even a risk of allergy or infection. And that is when it becomes too interventionist, instead of letting the natural dry fasting mechanism unfold, we end up interfering with it. We think we are strengthening the process, but we can, on the contrary, divert it. The body must then use energy to manage the intervention, instead of dedicating it to its deep work. In my vision, this is not the right time to multiply therapeutic aggressions during dry fasting. Dry fasting does not need to be spectacular to be powerful. It just needs calm, rest, safety, observation, and holistic support where we listen to people. And then we are not obliged to add more things that will complicate the fast. There I have been clear. I repeated myself a bit, but I think you understood me. The real question is it necessary during dry fasting to keep adding endlessly invasive methods that will thwart dry fasting? There, the body does not need to be rushed, it does not need to be shaken, it just needs to be in the calm, with gentle things and listening, and that is how it goes. There. Breaking the fast is the most important moment. It is important to respect this phase with hydration and liquids. There is a precise order for how we give liquids and how we inform the water and so on, which water to give there. Many focus on duration, 3, 5, 7, or 9 days. The real question is, how did you break your dry fast? How did you resume water? How did you resume food? How does your digestion work? How is the state of your nervous system? How do you recover during the exit? There, a bad exit can really damage the work of the fast. An exit that is too fast, too sugary, too large, too fibrous, too fermented, or too stimulating is not the solution. After dry fasting, the body is fragile. Digestion restarts, fluids redistribute, and insulin can spike if we give carbohydrates. That would be unsuitable regardless of the carbohydrates given. There, we really try to avoid carbohydrate-based foods after dry fasting for at least 4 or 5 days. This makes digestion much simpler and reduces fermentation. The vegetables you choose are very important after dry fasting. We do not just eat any vegetable in bulk. We do not just give soup to everyone without checking the vegetables. There are specific vegetables to give when breaking a dry fast. There are vegetables that will give fermentations, which are not good for your intestine, which contain what we call anti-nutrients, so which are not made for the human being because they are too harsh. These vegetables grew in nature and developed defenses. It is not by chance that they created defenses, so they are perhaps not ideal for the human being. So there are selections to be made. There are precise vegetables that we must give in the exit. The nervous system after dry fasting is very receptive. You must be very precise when breaking the fast. It is an art and an observation. One of the big mistakes we see is breaking the fast with sugars and carbohydrates. Watermelons or stewed fruit. I remind you, it is fructose, which are cooked carbohydrates. Dried fruits cooked in hot water, and you drink these liquids. It is sugar. It is fructose, and that is harmful because it restarts sugar addiction mechanisms. It will immediately lead to storage, insulin will rise, you will immediately stop ketosis and stop autophagy, and you will have very, very few benefits in the dry fast. I am not saying that you will not have any, but they are strongly diminished when you resume sugary compotes, when you take juices, when you resume coconut water. Everyone says you must drink it, but remember that coconut water has 34 grams of carbs per liter. So when you drink 2 liters, you have eaten 70 grams of carbohydrates. So you have stopped all the recovery mechanisms of the fast. It is a shame. So I am not saying fruits, watermelons, or coconut water are bad, but it is just the timing, the quantity, and the terrain, and the context in which they are taken that is unfavorable. Or that I said okay, but not in dry fasting exit there. Natural sugar is still sugar regardless of fruit. Fructose is still fructose, a very sugary need. A very sugary drink is still a metabolic load. A large amount of fruit is a stimulation, and in dry fasting, sugar calls for sugar. You have candidiasis, helicobacter, and bacteria that love sugar. You feed them and they start again more beautiful. Exits that are carbohydrate based at the end of dry fasting, it is for me a mistake. Everything I say, please don't take it as absolute truth. It is my own vision and perception. You are free to disagree with me. That is perfectly fine. No worries. I am entirely in support of that idea. The things that can be said, and then everyone acts according to their own thoughts. What I am saying is based on my personal practice and also on guiding groups. These are the observations we have been able to make. Existing models weren't suitable for me because we realized they don't even work. That is why I adapted some existing protocols, improved them, and made them more professional using my knowledge of nutrition and dietetics. And I believe that having good support during a dry fast, especially with advanced knowledge in nutrition, is a real advantage because it really allows them to take care of the preparation and the exit. Following the fast, the body is often still in ketosis, cleaning, recycling, and autophagy, and arriving suddenly with carbs cuts the dynamic, stops ketosis, and spikes insulin. We provide a massive carbohydrate signal, and then we truly hinder the repair process. In many cases, it is nonsense. It is not just a question of calories, it's a metabolic signal issue. There's also the gut terrain. Some pathologies love sugar. Some yeasts, opportunistic bacteria, the fermentation can be completely restarted, as I said, by an arrival that is too fast of carbohydrates. So we can experience immediate bloating. We noticed this because at the start we gave things that were slightly carbohydrate rich, and we saw immediately that it didn't work. People experience bloating, acid reflux, instability, fatigue, and a sense of brain fog. Watermelon appears to be ideal because it contains water, but it provides a large volume of sugar, so it is not adapted. Compotes aren't suitable either. Too many carbs. Coconut water doesn't work. These foods are also unsuitable. Another common mistake is introducing buckwheat too fast. Millet, porridge for example, it is a lie. You give porridge, it is indigestible. In exit, I know that you do not digest that. It is too heavy, it's too much. Plus adding dried fruits is a disaster. So there, you negate all the benefits of the fast, you cause irritation, and if there is oats in it, you have gluten. Even millet, no matter it isn't suitable. Fibrous vegetables don't work. Legumes, dried fruits, fermented foods, kefir, milk, it's a disaster. It is pro-inflammatory. It will irritate your mucous membranes. Casein is pro-inflammatory. We don't give it. So there, in a normal diet, some of these foods can have their place, but in exit, dry fasts really, you must avoid pushing the limits and giving things that are too complicated. There, Buckwheat, it is very healthy, but it must not be given. For me, in exit of a dry fast, it is unadapted. We must wait a good week before giving that. Raw vegetables can also be given, but there is a precise order and specific categories that must be followed. Legumes too, it is too heavy, I said it. Dried fruits, unadapted. Fermented foods, we do not give that. It is not valid. And then questions can also arise regarding lactose. We also have this problem of histamine, which will also create digestive fermentations issues. Fermented food isn't good for everyone, so we avoid it after a dry fast. We avoid probiotics. For me, in exit of dry fast, it is for me not adapted. A traditional product isn't right for everyone. That's what you must understand. Then another mistake we see, as some people think they saw in books, they saw protocols where we take sorbents. Because digestion is poor, the exit is poorly managed with bad foods, so we give a laxative which will go make a laxative effect where you will come out quickly. The foods that you are not digesting. For me, that is not a true understanding of the dry fast. Psyllium or things like that should not be given when exiting a dry fast. I'm not saying they lack benefits, but it's not the right time to give them. If the exit, as I say, is poorly managed, we add this sorbent. If digestion does not follow, we add another product, another sorbent. If the protocol causes discomfort, we add more. So we keep giving the body a crutch because it doesn't know how to function. We provide fuel that is not suitable, and then we try to accelerate something through an artificial means. So in my view, this is not suitable. So too many carbs, fibers, fermented foods, mixtures, and too much intervention, not enough rest, and not enough individualization. These are the errors we see in dry fasting. Then instead of adding a crutch, we must sometimes correct the root cause. The cause is providing the right foods during the exit. That is how I see the dry fast. Furthermore, people still believe and spread information that if you do not fast for 9 days, you will not heal a pathology. All of that is false. Some people came to our retreats and did 3 days of dry fasting. If the preparation is done well, if the exit is done well, we already have enormous benefits. So there is no need to take people into distances that are too extreme. What matters is what you do during the dry fast on a physical level, but also on a mental level. How will you learn to relax? How are you going to come out of the dry fast? You are going to continue the work for a few more days or even a few more weeks. That is where you obtain the therapeutic effects. It does not depend on the number of days you do in the cure. All of that, it is what I noticed, that pushing people too far will lead to complications. People will be completely exhausted, they will have used up all their reserves, and then there will be nothing left to recover with. In my opinion, that leads to extremes that are not suited to what we call a holistic and modern dry fast. The depth of the fast is not about duration, but adaptive capacity of the person. How will they recover? How will they recover from the hormetic stress we inflicted? If this person exceeds their capacity for adaptation, if you took someone to do 9 days when they were only capable of 5, you have burned them out. The recovery afterwards, there will be no benefit, or there will be less. So you must really respect, for a first time, not to take the person into distances that are too extreme. This is the result of my observations. So if a person exceeds their capacity for adaptation, the body will stop repairing, it will stop defending itself, and immunity will no longer be rebuilt. It stops regenerating. It is just surviving. It is in a state of post-traumatic stress, which is not our goal. The true companion, it is not to make someone hold on as long as possible. It is to know when to continue, when to stop them, when to slow them down. And that is exactly how we work with a person. So during a fast, you must not only detoxify, you must also rebuild the body. It needs minerals and proteins after a dry fast. Do not give amino acids for months like some who impose vegetarian diets for months. It is a mistake. We need light proteins with the categories of proteins that we must give. There are categories. There are light proteins, medium proteins, and strong proteins. We play with these stages during dry fast recovery. We give proteins adapted to the person at the right time. We give the right fats on the right day, at the right moment, and not in just any order. The resumption must be progressive, adapted to the person, while avoiding fermentations, the anti-nutrients. My message is simple. I don't say all interventionist approaches are bad. I am not saying that we must reject all ancient traditions. I am not saying that one single model holds all the truth. I just say we need discernment. Being too interventionist can weaken the process. A too fast exit where people will eat too quickly can ruin part of the work. A too sweet exit can disturb the body. Healthy foods can be poorly placed in the exit protocol. Therefore, you must be careful about what you give to the person. You must not impose practices that are impressive just to create a spectacle, as we can see with some people. It is useless and risky. The dry fast demands respect, respecting the body, the rhythm, and the terrain. The dry fast isn't about doing the most. Don't compare yourself to others. The well-conducted dry fast, it is really a respect for the distance. It is the intelligence of one's personal listening. And then we call upon our sixth sense, where we will know with intelligence when we must stop, when to act. It is a form of listening and introspection we must do inside oneself. Well, that is all for today. I thank you. See you next time for a next video. Bye bye.